Today, we're going to be talking about measurement in organizations. And measurement is a tool to help us understand what's going on in an organization and make effective decisions. Think about your car and how much measurement, how much feedback you're getting from your car about what's going on with it, and how you couldn't really drive your car without those measures. You couldn't drive your car without knowing how much gas you have, how fast you're going, the temperature of your engine. We need to know those basic aspects of what's going on with the vehicle to drive it effectively. Likewise, in organizations, we have to be able to measure what's important to us to make sure that we're doing things well and making the correct decisions. When we talk about measurement in organizations, we often talk about something called KPIs, key performance indicators. Key performance indicators are the measurements that you can use to assess the success of your organization and make those good decisions. Today, we're going to be focusing mainly on people outcomes, so the employee KPIs. This is a class really aimed at organizational behavior. My background is in psychology, so this is my area of expertise. I assume in marketing, they'll teach you marketing KPIs, and in finance, they'll teach you finance KPIs. Today, we're really going to focus on how do you measure human outcomes in an organization. You have to be incredibly thoughtful about how you measure success in your organization. Because once you choose these measures, people will do whatever it takes to maximize those numbers. Let me give you an example of what I mean. When the British first colonized India, they were pretty shocked at the amount of deadly snakes that lived in India. And so they wanted to get rid of them. They wanted to reduce the overall snake population. And so they started paying $5 a head for cobras. You bring a cobra head in, we'll pay you $5. And the idea was that you get people to go out, kill cobras, reduce the cobra population, which is what they wanted. Now, people being the creative entrepreneurs that they are, they realize that it's very time consuming to go out and look for cobras to kill, and it's a lot faster to just raise them in your backyard. And so all these people started raising cobras in pits in their backyard. And when the British figured this out, they were like, oh man, this is the exact opposite of what we want. We're not paying for cobra heads anymore. And so everyone let their cobras go. And so you have this huge spike in the cobra population, which is the exact opposite of what they were trying to accomplish. This is what's known as the cobra effect. It's also called a perverse incentive, when the way you measure something ends up accomplishing the exact opposite of what you were trying to accomplish. Now, this is what the British were really interested in, right? They wanted to reduce the overall cobra population in India. That's a really difficult thing to measure. They couldn't go out every week and measure the entire cobra population. So they chose a measure that was a lot faster and a lot simpler. And the measure was how many cobra heads you bring us, right? And they were thinking there would be an opposite relationship. The more dead cobras, the fewer living cobras. But as we see, that's not what happened. So they chose a simple measure because what they were really interested in was difficult to measure. That's called a proxy variable. A proxy variable is when we want to measure one thing, but it's really difficult to measure. And so we measure something else that's easier to measure instead. We use proxy variables all the time. A really common one is that people often use weight as a proxy measure for health. It's really easy to measure your weight with a bathroom scale, right? But weight is not a perfect measure of health. And in fact, sometimes when people first start working out, they get really frustrated because they notice they gain weight because they're trading muscle for fat, and muscle's heavier than fat. So they'll actually gain weight and people will be like, oh no, I'm getting less healthy, when in reality they're becoming more healthy. And so this is what's called a proxy variable. Proxy variables are good. We need to use them. It's often very difficult and time consuming to measure what it is that we're really interested in measuring. But you just have to be aware of the shortcomings of proxy variables, and also making sure that the proxy variable you choose will reward the behavior that you're looking to reward. In organizations, there's really only one thing that we're ever interested in, which is how much value does a certain activity create for the organization. We want employees, we want everyone in the organization maximizing their value output with every activity that they participate in. And so that's what we're almost always interested in, is how much value does this create? That is often an impossible thing to measure, and so we rely on proxy variables. And we'll be talking about some of those variables in regard to people and employees today. So we got a long agenda today. We're going to be talking about 7 different things. I'm going to explain to you what a construct is and why they're so difficult to measure. We'll talk about how it's important to measure attitudes, knowledge, behavior, and results when it comes to people. We'll talk about the importance of making surveys reliable and valid. We'll talk about how to choose the best type of question for your construct. We'll talk about how do you write questions that are easy to understand. We'll talk about how to assess your sample. And finally, we'll talk about some kind of miscellaneous measurement decisions I think are really important to be aware of.